Hello, I'm Don Tapscott. I'm very sorry that I can't be with you today. I had planned to come to Korea, and just a couple of days ago, I had to cancel the trip because of restrictions around COVID. I do love the country. I've been there several times. I love the food. I love the music. I love the people. And I do look forward to coming back and to meeting with you face to face. But for now, we're going to have this session online. I'd like to talk to you today about a very big development in the Metacity Summit. It's the perfect venue for this. The rise of the metaverse. And I'm going to argue that blockchain technology is enabling a new area of collaboration, commerce, and citizenship. Let me explain that. Now, the idea of the metaverse has been around for quite a while. It actually goes way back to a story published in America in the Saturday Evening Post in 1950. It's called The Veldt by an author named Ray Bradbury. And he imagines a room for children, a nursery capable of a very stimulating environment. And I'll read you a little section from the article. The nursery was silent. It was as a jungle glade, empty at a hot noon. The walls were blank and two-dimensional. Now, as George and Lydia Hadley stood in the center of the room, the walls began to purr and recede into crystalline distance. It seemed, and presently an African veldt appeared in 3 dimensions on all sides, in color reproduced to the final pebble and bit of straw. The ceiling above them became a deep sky with a hot yellow sun. And this environment became a very stimulating environment for the children. Now, there were some dark sides to this as well, which the article gets into. But this was sort of the first description, to my knowledge, of this idea of a virtual world. And then flash forward to 2005, and we saw the rise of Second Life. I wrote about this in Wikinomics, and this is a picture of me in Second Life, a virtual world, giving a speech. And there was you can see a screen here, and audience crowded around and was listening to me speak. But Second Life kind of petered out. And we didn't hear much about the metaverse for a long time. Now, all of a sudden, everyone's talking about it. So what's going on here? Well, there's a poll from the pandemic and the post-pandemic world for a movement into virtual worlds. Combined with that, there's a technology push coming about from a new generation of the internet. Thirdly, we see the rebirth of the metaverse enabled by blockchain technology that provides us with a whole series of technology capabilities that were not possible, but were needed for the metaverse to be successful. Fourth, I want to talk to you about the opportunity facing Korea. And finally, I'd like to discuss the issue of leadership and discuss frankly, how are you going to get there? So let's begin. The pandemic world is creating a pull for change. The economic costs of COVID-19 are devastating on a scale that we haven't seen in recent history. The human costs are still unfathomable. And this is one of those rare turning points in history. This is a picture of the main street in Toronto during the height of the lockdown, during rush hour. Nobody was moving. And the pandemic is causing profound changes to our economy, our behavior, our society. Some leaders in governments that failed the challenge will be or have been replaced, and many institutions are being scrutinized and hopefully changed for the better. Pandemic has revealed with searing clarity many of the weaknesses in our institutions. How can it be in the United States today that supply chains is the #1 challenge facing the President of the United States? This is 2021. Or how can it be that we didn't have the data, our health data was locked in silos to stop this pandemic in its tracks? And when the dust settles, as it surely will, how or should our behavior, our businesses, our economy, and our society be different? Well, the pandemic has also created a push into the virtual world. We're now shopping online. This is a photo of a company called Majuri. It's one of the fastest growing companies in America, jewelry for young women. And full disclosure, my daughter is the chief marketing officer for the company, but they began as an online company. They still have a hybrid model, but they're fundamentally online. Entertainment is now going online. We're not just watching television at home or playing video games, and we're doing plenty of that. We're also watching movies, and the whole concept of what is a movie has changed, become something in many different parts. Finally, we're educating ourselves online. Rather than students sitting there in a classroom, one size fits all, listening to a lecture, we're interacting with content. And this is a long overdue change. Work is now happening online. The workplace has become virtual, and especially for young people, all the evidence shows that there's no decline in productivity. We're now taking care of our health online. We're talking to doctors and nurses. We're exercising using technologies like Peloton for cycling and for jogging, and that's moved us away from the traditional gyms. We're informing ourselves online. I said many years ago, decades ago, that the world will move away from a physical newspaper being delivered to your door. Well, that of course has occurred. Now there's some issues there, a possible fragmentation of public discourse as a result of that. And finally, we're socializing online. Now, this is a tough time to be young. High school and university students are working hard to find ways to meet new people and engage socially when they're not attending classes, school activities, or clubs. But dating apps that were once viewed as weird a couple of decades ago are now dominant, and they're no longer optional for most young people. So this is creating a pull into the online world. And we've also got big transformations happening to all of our industries. These are 7 of 30 that we're discussing at the Blockchain Research Institute. Big changes to money and financial services, supply chain, healthcare, the way that we manage our energy and our energy grids, our property rights, concept of our identity, and government. So overall, we're being pushed into the online world. Secondly, there's a pull from a next generation of technology. Now, let me just tell you a little background story on this. I wrote a couple of books in the 1980s that nobody read. I think my mother bought most of the copies, but I started writing bestsellers in the early 1990s. Paradigm Shift, that was obviously a big book, and The Digital Economy, that was the first bestseller about the web. And 20 years later, I was asked to write the anniversary edition of The Digital Economy. And I had to think about where have we been and where are we going? And the book holds up very well. The concept of the digital economy is understood by everyone around the world now, and I'm very proud of that. But it occurred to me that we've gone through a first era of the digital age: mainframes, mini computers, PCs, the internet, the web, social media, the mobile web, the cloud, big data. And now we're entering a second era where technology infuses itself throughout everything. We have technologies that learn to do things that they weren't programmed to do. We're animating the physical world as billions and trillions of inert objects become smart communicating devices doing transactions. We have virtual worlds and virtual reality. And I found myself coming to a surprising conclusion that the foundational technology for the second era was in fact blockchain, or the underlying technologies of blockchain, of cryptocurrencies. And to me, this represents the second era of the internet. Let me explain. For those 40 years, we've had an internet of information. But if I send you some information, a PDF of this deck, photograph, email, I'm actually not sending you the information, I'm sending you a copy. And that works fine for information. But when it comes to assets, things of value, things that really matter in Korea to the economy, copying those is not a good idea. I'm talking about money, financial assets like stocks and bonds, intellectual property, cultural assets like art or music. A vote's an asset, something of value that belongs to somebody. Copying those is not good. You don't want someone copying your vote or the song that you just recorded or your identity. And if I send you $1,000, it's really important that I don't still have the money, right? Now, cryptographers have called this the double spend problem for decades. And so today we rely on middlemen, banks, credit card companies, stock exchanges, social media companies, Uber, and so on, to authenticate identity and establish trust between parties. And they maintain transaction records. They perform the transaction logic of business, virtually every type of commerce. They identify the parties, they identify the asset, that's a stock. They clear and settle transactions. They keep records and so on. And overall, they've done a pretty good job, but there are growing limitations. They're centralized. That means that they can be hacked. They exclude a couple of billion people from the global economy. They take a piece of the value for performing this service, 10% to send money internationally. They slow down the economy. Why does it take a week to send money between two countries? And they capture our data. And this is a big problem. So what if there were an internet of value, some kind of vast global distributed ledger, or anything of value from money to securities, to intellectual property, to a vote, a song, could be managed, stored, transacted securely and privately, peer-to-peer. Well, that's how Bitcoin got us started. In 2008, an anonymous person or persons named Satoshi Nakamoto wrote a paper outlining this new form of electronic cash. And Bitcoin was just the beginning, but it was important because for the first time ever, people could trust each other to send money and to communicate and manage value peer-to-peer. And trust is not achieved by an intermediary, it's achieved by cryptography, collaboration, and some clever code, which is why we call it the trust protocol. This is a native digital medium for trust. Now, Bitcoin was just the beginning. It was the first app of the internet of value. Just like email was the first app of the internet of information. But then we have a number of general purpose platforms that appeared that look more like the World Wide Web, where you can build any app. So Hyperledger from the Linux Foundation, Ethereum, a platform that enables something called smart contracts. Ethereum was started by a 19-year-old Canadian, and it's by far the most valuable company ever in Canadian history. It's valued as much as all of the Canadian banks combined. And now we have a whole number of exciting new platforms as well. Cosmos and Polkadot, the internet of blockchains. Exciting new platforms for building apps like Cardano or Solana. Or in Korea, you have Boss Agora. And this is the future operating platform for the economy. And I did get lucky with the timing of this book, and it did become the big bestseller, and it is published in Korean. So that's a technology push that's coming from a second era of the digital age and the internet. Now, what's all this got to do with the metaverse? Well, as I said, Second Life began in 2005, but it petered off. These technologies are now getting a second life, if I may say that. Let me describe that. So you have these new blockchain-based metaverse contenders. Roblox, it's a market cap of $74 billion. It's one of the largest online virtual communities with a huge collection of player-created 3D worlds, games, environments. And all games are made by users. Roblox just builds the tools and environment to create them. They have 32 million daily active users, 202 million total users as of this summer. And they view themselves as a metaverse platform focusing on player safety and civility, which they believe is the key to fostering healthy interactions. Now, other metaverse now that one's not based on blockchain, but other contenders include a company called Pearl Abyss. And this is quite intriguing. They run a large multiplayer online game, 20 million players, called Black Desert. And they also bought the well-known EVE Online multiplayer game, which has the unusual distinction of being one of the largest single shared worlds, period. It has no shards. They don't split up the users into multiple worlds or servers. And these two just appeared without blockchain, but you bundle in blockchain, and all of a sudden the metaverse becomes supercharged, because these metaverse platforms had a number of severe weaknesses that blockchain solves. The first is, with blockchain, you can have a digital currency to do transactions, to purchase digital assets, to buy and sell things. And mana is the currency of a virtual world called Decentralized. And a person holding mana is like a citizen of Decentralized, having the power to vote and participate in administration and governance. And after 2 years bouncing around at 10 cents, mana reached its all-time high of $5.87. That's 6 Korean won. Pushing the combined value of all the tokens past $10.5 billion. So this is a new blockchain-enabled environment that has its own currency. That wasn't possible before blockchain. Secondly, in these virtual worlds, in the metaverse, there are assets, but it was not really possible to protect assets in the past. Because if you created something like a piece of art, someone could copy that. But now with blockchain, there are tokens called non-fungible tokens that are virtual certificates that can record proof of digital ownership over a piece of digitized packet of information. And that could be a photo, a file, a song, a virtual cloth for your virtual avatar, or a video. And for example, in Decentraland, parcels or land are coded as NFTs. And the value of the land depends on the rarity of the NFT, its location, the value of adjacent properties, and so on. So NFTs are one of 9 types of digital assets that we describe at the Blockchain Research Institute. Currencies are one, like Bitcoin, for example, but there are other assets that are tokenized. They're represented by a token. A protocol token enables the users of a platform to govern and make decisions. So they enable smart contracts to function. It's governance tokens that gives them a role in decision making. You have non-fungible tokens, as I just described. This concept was explained 7 years ago in Blockchain Revolution in our book. You have exchange tokens that enable things like virtual stock exchanges to work. There are securities tokens that represent an interest or a share in a company. You have stable coins that are a form of currency, but they're pegged to a stable currency, typically the US dollar. Natural asset tokens are like a token representing something in the physical world, like a carbon credit, or it could represent a physical thing like a tree in the Amazon. And then you have central bank digital currencies, and all countries will turn their fiat or national currencies into central bank currencies. So you can see this idea of protecting assets in a virtual world called Sandbox. And this is a vision of a 3D metaverse that's launched with an interesting collection of brands and partners. Adidas appears to own a parcel, and other notables include Smurfs, Snoop Dogg, and more. And last week, or the week of November 22nd, a metaverse mega yacht sold for $650,000 on Sandbox. That was an NFT, making it the most expensive NFT ever sold on this platform. So you couldn't have that before. Engine is creating an ecosystem of blockchain and NFT powered games. And these NFTs are used in very exciting ways, from bestowing special abilities to unlocking secrets. So that's number 2. You can protect assets. Number 3 is blockchain enables decentralization. So you can now have a metaverse where there's no central power or authority that's making all the rules, that's spying on people, or that's controlling the whole platform. This is all done through software in a decentralized network. So you can have virtual currencies to print things. You can protect assets through NFTs. But mana, again, is the currency enabled that enables this platform called Decentralized. And Decentralized is a completely decentralized business model. So let me give you some economics on how this works. 80 years ago, a Nobel Prize winning economist named Ronald Coase asked a deceptively simple question. He said, why does the firm exist? If Adam Smith is right and the open market is the best mechanism to manage and allocate resources like people, information, money, goods, materials, why isn't everybody an independent contractor at every step in production? Why do we have companies? And he said the answer is, and he won a Nobel Prize for saying this, the answer is transaction costs. He talked about the cost of search. Imagine trying to find all the right information or people or resources to make something like a cup out there in an open market. That'd be prohibitive. The cost of coordination, getting all these people to work together to create a cup. They never met each other. That wouldn't work. The cost of contracting. Every little activity in the economy would be a contract. That wouldn't work. And overall, the cost of establishing trust. So the result was the 20th century corporation had an architecture. It was highly centralized. It was very vertical, and it was command and control. And it was also vertically integrated. Henry Ford had inside the boundaries of the Ford Motor Company, a power plant, a steel mill, a shipping company, a factory, a glass company. Why? Because the costs of coordinating in an open market and transactions were greater than the cost of doing things inside the boundaries of Ford. Now, in 1993, I said, well, I think networks are starting to make the boundaries of the firm more porous. I called it the extended enterprise. Then we saw the rise of the internet, and companies began to outsource. Cisco, the mantra was focus on what you do best and partner to do the rest. For a while, Cisco Systems became the most valuable company in the world because of a business model. They look more like a network. Now, what happens when you see the rise of blockchain? Blockchain is demolishing these transaction costs, and companies can still be vertically integrated, but there's a rise of a whole new kind of way of creating wealth and orchestrating capability in society. And it's called a decentralized model. And you can see this today. Have you heard of DeFi, decentralized finance? This is software on a blockchain replacing everything that banks do. And this is now the fastest growing technology industry in the world. You've heard of fintech. Well, fintech is a tiny thing compared to DeFi. Fintech is just putting some icing on the existing cake. DeFi is about building a whole new bakery and a whole new concept of what is a pastry. And DeFi is exploding right now. It basically didn't exist a year ago, and it's taking off. Now, how far could decentralization go? Well, in the book Blockchain Revolution, Alex and I described something called a decentralized autonomous enterprise. Shortly thereafter, an organization called the Decentralized Autonomous Organization appeared. This was a venture capital company that had no CEO and no management. It was a bunch of software on a blockchain, and it raised in a crowdfunding campaign. This company made of software raised $170 million. Now, it's not a happy ending because there was a flaw in one of the smart contracts, and a hacker was showing the ability to steal some money. So they had to give the money back, but this existed for a while. So the whole architecture of the corporation is changing. And that is a huge driver and enabler of these decentralized worlds. Again, it's called Decentraland. And in June, Sotheby's, the world's oldest auction house, opened up a digital replica of its London galleries in Decentraland. And the structure features all 5 ground level gallery spaces, as well as the figure of Sotheby's London commissionaire, Hans Lutimer, on hand, and he's there to greet people as they come in. And so this is all something that exists. It has its own currency. It's had NFTs, and this is an image of an avatar of me standing in front of Sotheby's in Decentraland. There's no overall central corporation driving this whole thing. And that enables a whole number of benefits to people in the virtual world. From October 21st to 24th this year, Decentralized held the first Metaverse Festival, and it attracted 50,000 people, virtually attendees. And they claimed 11,000 unique digital NFTs. The company also said it gave out 50,000 proof of attendance protocols in the form of NFTs to participate. And they said that they're bringing this back next year. So that's a powerful thing. The fourth thing, the way that blockchain is helping make metaverses work is it enables us to recover our digital identities. And this is so important because today we have a virtual image of ourselves, a mirror image, and that the virtual you may know more about you than you do because you can't remember what you bought a year ago or where you were a year ago, what you said a year ago, what medication you took, what diagnosis you had. And the problem is that you create this data from your behavior and your movement and your body and your writing and transactions, but it gets captured by a small handful of landlords and big companies like Google and Facebook and so on. And imagine if Facebook is the one to create the metaverse, they're going to be capturing all this data, and that's a big problem. So in North America, NASDAQ, the big stock exchange for emerging companies, almost half of the value of NASDAQ is owned by 5 companies. We call them digital conglomerates. They're a new species of business, unlike anything that ever existed before. And they're capturing the data, the asset class of the digital age. This is a big problem. You create the data, they capture it. That means you can't use the data to plan your life. You can't monetize the data and they're becoming wealthy, you're not. It means the data is not secure because it's on central servers and it will be hacked. It means that you can't aggregate the data in a pandemic. It also means that your privacy is undermined. And people say to me, well, Don, privacy is dead, get over it. This is stupidity to say that. Privacy is the foundation of freedom. You know this in Korea, that we need to get our data back so that we can manage our virtual identities for ourselves. And blockchain is so important, and because it enables us to have a metaverse where as citizens of the metaverse can capture their data into a self-sovereign digital identity. And all this transactional data is swept up and it becomes part of your identity. There's another reason why this is so important, and that's because we need to have virtual worlds where the users create the rules and whereby we know what the rules are. And imagine a metaverse created by a company like Facebook. You don't know what the rules are. In the physical world, we do. So this is a little thing I just picked up off my desk. Okay, I'm holding it with 2 fingers. I'm going to open up my fingers. What will happen to this? Do you think it'll go up? Do you think it'll go sideways? Or will it go down? Well, let's try it. It went down. There's a rule there. It's called gravity. But in the virtual world of these digital conglomerates, you don't know what the rules are. So you search on Google for a video, very strange. You get YouTube videos owned by the same company. You're on Facebook and you put a URL in a post that takes people to another platform. You don't get many likes. I wonder why. Maybe there's an algorithm that says something with a URL, we don't communicate it very broadly. So this is about not just about privacy and the right to own our data and to monetize our data and so on. It's about the autonomy of the individual. And we can now have a metaverse where we can capture our digital identities and have our autonomy back. So this brings me to our forum today, and I'm very, very excited about the metaverse in Namyangju City, and we're going to be hearing later from Boss Goran and the mayor and others about this very important initiative. And the forum will cooperate in operations for the development of this ESG Metacity Namyangju platform and the creation of a digital ecosystem for sustainable projects and for the city's administrative development. And I'm very excited about this, and I look forward to contributing. Why should you care? Well, first of all, you build the first big metacity where government services and other capabilities are implemented. You have the potential to become the Silicon Valley of the second era of the digital age. Where will Silicon Valley be? It won't be in California, the United States, I don't think. Could it be in Korea? This is a new technology sector, and you build the new Silicon Valley, you get jobs, you get tax revenue, you get the ability to create wonderful urban centers. But this technology is not just a sector, it's the basis of all sectors. Something like this can help a country develop prosperity overall, to reinvent its financial institutions, to transform supply chains, manufacturing, and other things. Thirdly, a metaverse like this can help build a new era of democracy. Let's face it, all around the world, democracy is in trouble, and we know that. And there's a crisis of legitimacy, United States being the best example. And legitimacy is the idea that you may disagree with who's in power, but at least you think the system is a good one. This is now being challenged in many countries as people wonder if democracy really works. We created a first era of democracy, and which was good. You know, we established elected institutions of governance, but there was a weak public mandate. There was opacity, and citizens were inert, and representatives didn't represent citizens often. They represented the powerful interests that put them in power. Could we create a second era characterized by a culture of public deliberation built on active citizenship with transparency and representatives accountable to citizens? I think the metaverse can help us do this. We can have e-voting in this environment that's secure. You could have things like a smart vote, voting for a municipal initiative, and you're voting not just for an elected person, but your vote is inside a smart contract supporting a specific program. And the elected representatives need to implement that program, not just get elected. This is a very exciting opportunity. I think the metaverse can also help us build a sustainable world. Surely, if the pandemic has shown us anything, it's that we are all connected. We have interdependence. And this is a NASA animation of pollution flows around the world. No company can succeed in a world that's failing. And no country can succeed in a world that's failing either. And as we move into the metaverse environment, we can help reduce our carbon costs and create a more sustainable planet. So let me close by talking about leadership. This is a new paradigm I'm talking about. And when you get a new paradigm, it's a new mental model of how things work. And paradigms are often based on assumptions that are so strong we don't know that they're there. The Earth is at the center of the universe. That was the paradigm for millennia. The big problem in the world is communism. Remember that one? Well, no, we've moved on. A city is a physical place. The purpose of computing is to automate and reduce headcount. These are all old paradigms, and something can happen that causes a change, a shift to occur. And when that occurs, these new shifts cause dislocation, conflict, confusion, uncertainty. They're nearly always greeted with coolness or worse. Vested interests fight against change, and the leaders of the old paradigm have great difficulties embracing the new. How will Korea find leadership for change? Well, leadership can come from anywhere. And we certainly look forward to working with you to help you make this succeed. At the Blockchain Research Institute, this is our mission, to link the potential of blockchain with its actual deployment. And we're doing 110 research projects, and we invite companies and governments in Korea to join us. And we have a Blockchain Institute operation in Seoul, and we're very proud of our operation there. We also provide a whole series of tools to help advance this story. And you can take a screenshot of this, and they're all available on Amazon.com. So to summarize, a pull from the pandemic world for virtual worlds, a push from the second era of the digital age. We're seeing a new metaverse possible because of digital currencies, the protection of digital assets through NFTs, the rise of decentralized business models that are open and democratic, and the ability to recover our digital identities. And this is creating a big opportunity to build a technology sector in Korea, but also enabling prosperity for all sectors, revitalizing democracy and building a sustainable world. The challenge is one of leadership. And let me end, if I could. Can you do this? Well, the future is not something to be predicted. It's something to be achieved. And we can achieve a very different future if we will it. You know, we've been studying nature at the Blockchain Research Institute to try and understand how this technology could help us, and a metaverse could help us create more wealth, more value, and protect our world. Fish come in schools, bees come in swarms, starlings come in something called a murmuration. It's a word in the English dictionary. And a murmuration stands for the murmuring of the wings of the birds. And starlings are out over a 20-kilometer radius, foraging for food. And at night they come together and they create one of the most spectacular things in nature. And the murmuration has a function. You can see in some of these videos, see this? A hawk, 25 times the size of a starling, a predator, being chased away by the collective power of the little birds. And scientists that have studied this say they've never seen an accident. There's leadership, but there's no one leader. And when the moment is right, this magic happens. Now, is this some kind of fanciful analogy? Or could it help you understand the metaverse better? Well, this thing functions according to all of the principles that I described to you today. It's a collaboration. Remember I said trust is not achieved through a middleman. It's achieved through collaboration and through code. There's some DNA that gives the bird some rules. The big one is don't bump into anybody else. But another rule is don't get too far away. Remember I talked about interdependence? Business can't succeed in a world that's failing. Well, the murmuration has a great interdependence. An individual bird functions as if the interests of the bird are connected to the interests of the murmuration as a whole. And finally, the murmuration has a great, what I would call, integrity. And integrity is the foundation of trust. So what is trust? What is trust? Well, to me, I can say this in a sentence. Trust is the expectation that another party will act with integrity. Trust is the expectation that another party will do the right thing. And now with a blockchain-powered metaverse, we can build trusting communities and trusting environments where people do the right thing. I mean, for the murmuration, a little bird will chase a predator, a killer, 25 times its size because it knows that the other birds will do the right thing, that they will have its back. Well, I look at this and I think about your initiative, and I get a lot of hope. Imagine if we connect ourselves with some kind of new virtual world made of glass and air and cryptography and code. What kind of problems could we solve? I get a lot of hope that this more decentralized, more open and smaller world that my grandchildren inherit will be a better one, and that this age of networked intelligence will be an age where the promise of the digital economy that I outlined decades ago can finally be fulfilled. Thank you very much.